This June 30th, 2025 meeting of the Worcester Conservation Commission is now called to order. My name is Diane Frattoni, and I will be chairing this meeting. As part of this meeting, we will be holding hearings under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and Regulations and the City of Worcester Wetlands Protection Ordinance and Regulations. The commissioners are volunteers who serve to enforce these laws and regulations to protect specific values identified as being important to Massachusetts and the City of Worcester. Commission decisions are based on these laws and regulations and are not arbitrary or based on personal likes or dislikes. It is important to the Commission that these hearings are held in a fair and equitable way for all parties involved. This requires that discussion takes place in a civil manner and that every individual in this meeting is treated respectfully. To facilitate this, the hearings take place in the order they are listed on the agenda, which is available by the door and online. First, the applicant will present an overview of the project to the Commission. Next, staff will provide comments on the proposed work. Then the Commission will then direct any questions it has to the applicant or staff. After the Commission is done questioning the applicant, the floor will be open to the public. Comments and questions must be directed to the chairperson, not to the applicant or their representative, and they must pertain to the regulations that the Commission oversees. For example, although you might have concerns over the traffic resulting from a particular project, the Conservation Commission does not regulate traffic, so traffic concerns will not be discussed in the meeting. Please note that while new points will be given ample time to present, repetitive comments will be cut short in the interest of having all parties be given the opportunity to speak. We ask that all applicants and members of the public please state their name and city or town of residence for the record. To manage remote participation during our hybrid meetings and prevent disruptions, all participants are automatically blocked from unmuting themselves, turning on their video, or sending chat messages. For remote participants who would like to comment on an item on our agenda, we ask that you use the raise hand feature in Zoom during the discussion on that item. If you are joined by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Staff will then call on members of the public one at a time and give them permission to unmute themselves. If you are joined by phone, you will then be able to unmute yourself by pressing *6. Everyone please introduce themselves.
Eric Flint, Division of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Maddie Vanderboom, Division of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Stuart Kirshner, Commissioner.
Lindsay Nystrom, Commissioner.
Thank you. Are there any requests for continuances, postponements, or withdrawals?
Yes, we have item number 3, 238 Belmont Street, also known as Bell Pond. That's a request to postpone or continue the public hearing to July 21st and extend the constructive grant deadline to August 12th. Item number 7, 17 Mill Street, request to postpone the public hearing to July 21st and extend the constructive grant deadline to August 12th. And then item number 8, 31 Randolph Road, also a request to postpone the public hearing to July 21st and extend the constructive grant deadline to August 12th.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirshner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. First item of new business, number 1504 Massasoit Road, request for determination of applicability. This is a little unusual as staff is going to be the applicant.
Thanks. So the Division of Planning and Regulatory Services has filed a request for determination of applicability for an exploratory boring at 504 Massasoit Road. This is within the Broadmeadow Brook Wildlife Sanctuary on a piece of city-owned property that's part of Audubon's larger sanctuary area. This is related to a project to design an accessible bridge across Broadmeadow Brook along Sprague Trail. This trail has been flooded out for the past several years due to increasing frequency and intensity of storms. It's flooded out most of the year. So this is an attempt to extend Mass Audubon's All Persons Trail an extra half mile or so to provide accessible access to and across the brook. We're funded through a Mass Trails grant for the design phase of this work, and so far we have gone out and delineated the wetlands. A survey team has been out there to pick up those flags to to use for the design phase. And the first step of getting that design done is the geotechnical borings. So they're going to do one boring, which is located just at the end of the trail. It's within bordering land subject to flooding, it's within riverfront area, and it's within the 15-foot buffer zone to the bank of the brook, but it is outside of BVW. So it's at the end of the trail, just outside of the wetland area. They're going to access the site using a tracked machine to get down here and dig the boring hole. The work is expected to take 1 day. They're going to backfill all the spoils into the hole at the conclusion of work, and they should be in and out in a matter of hours. There will be some tree pruning necessary along the part of the path that's closer to Sprague Lane, which is well set back from the wetland areas. There's no tree removals associated with this, and the machine will be accessing this location on a compacted trail. Spill kits will be present on site. And I think that's about it. So I'm happy to answer any questions the commission has. On the screen here, this is just a screenshot from Google Earth showing where they're going to be accessing the site from Sprague Lane. Going to relocate that boulder. Again, this area here is outside of the buffer zone, but just to illustrate the kind of necessary tree pruning that will be needed. And we also have the equipment here, and I'll turn it over to the commission for any questions.
So this piece of machinery is a self-propelled piece of machinery, or is something bringing it into the woods?
Yes, it's tracked machinery that will drive
So it will
in
drive,
along the path. Yeah,
and so the only machine going in and out?
correct.
Okay. Any reason to think that they would require additional borings, or you would be able to get all the samples that you need in the one visit?
Yeah, additional borings aren't anticipated at this time. The engineering team is confident that the conditions in the area should be uniform enough that one boring will suffice for the design.
Okay. If any of the other commissioners have questions about this project? If you guys could just, yeah,
I'm all set.
thank you, Stuart. Because I can't see you, so if you could, Lindsay, just say yes or no. I'll take that as a no. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Anybody curious about this or any questions? No? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
We just
So moved.
Second.
Did we go to public? Oh, we did public, okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay. So then so moved if there's no objections.
Second.
Did I not need to close the hearing on this one?
we can close it. We just need a motion for a determination, either a positive or a negative determination.
Okay.
But we can close the hearing. That's fine.
I move for a negative determination.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fertoni? Aye. Next item, number 2, 725 Southbridge Street and Southbridge Street right-of-way. Request for determination of applicability.
Do I press this?
It's green,
on.
so we should be able to hear you.
Good afternoon. So my name is Magdalena Lofstedt. I'm a wetland scientist, and I'm representing Crown Castle. We filed a RDA to seek permission to install approximately 29 linear feet of a communication conduit. It's a 4-inch diameter. It would run from Southbridge Street. The property in question here is 725 Southbridge Street. The new conduit would run from the existing handhole that's located within Southbridge Street. I don't have a pointer, but
If you want to, you can bring your microphone up if you want to point to the location.
it's pretty clear. It's the red box.
Yep, okay.
Great, thank you so much. And it would run from that existing handhole to the building, and in addition, a Crown Castle manhole or handhole will also be installed. The area is previously disturbed. Oh, great. As you can see, it's a degraded landscaped area. Then we have the concrete sidewalk, and then the existing handhole is located right along the side of the street, just beyond the concrete sidewalk. And the purpose of the project is to boost wireless speed and capacity for the new owners of the commercial building. And the conduit will be installed using open trench excavation. The trench will be 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep. Upon completion of the installation, all existing grades will be restored to pre-existing contours. The work is located within the 50-foot buffer zone, at the 100-foot buffer zone, as well as BLSF according to the preliminary FEMA maps. It's filed as a limited project according to 1053-3D. So it doesn't require a filing under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act under minor activities in buffer zone. The total disturbance within the buffer zone is approximately 120 square feet. Out of that, about 100 square feet is within the 50-foot buffer zone. The only work within the 30-foot no construction setback is accessing that existing handhole within Southbridge Street. So there's like no excavation in the 30-foot zone. And we are proposing to install filter socks in the existing catch basins to prevent any sediment from entering the river, the Middle River, which is the resource area that this work is adjacent to, and also compost logs along the limit of work is shown in brown on that plan. And a traffic management plan will be developed. The work meets the performance standards of the local ordinance and regulations for work within buffer zone, and also meets the performance standards for work in BLSF under the Mass Wetlands Protection Act. So I guess I'll open it up to questions.
Staff?
Yep, so staff's main concern was it's within borderland subject to flooding, so we did request that they provide evidence that they do meet the performance standards of borderland subject to flooding, which they do, so they're going to return to existing grades. We also requested that they show inlet protection in all the catch basins, which they have updated the plan and provided an updated plan today showing inlet protection on all those catch basins. So no concerns from staff at this time.
Commissioners, any questions or concerns?
Just to be clear, all the spoils will be returned and there won't be anything left on site?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Lindsay?
No questions.
Thank you. So the duration of the work is expected to be how long?
I think it's about a week.
About a
It's
week?
a very limited, small effort, yeah. And it's anticipated to start August 1st.
And the excavated material's going to be stored where until the trench is refilled?
It'll be stored adjacent away from the river, so to speak, so on the,
Parking lot, or do you have access to the rest of the Rotman site to work?
yes. So it'll be stored adjacent to the trench, because, it's a very, very limited 4 feet, 3 feet, it's a very limited, small trench, shallow.
So am I to understand that the materials will be stored within 2 feet of the trench area? The typical spoils pile will be within 2 feet of the trench area?
We can comply with that.
Well, I'm just trying to say because that is within the plane. So how are you going to prevent any runoff if a rain event happens?
So as you can see, we have installed we're showing a compost log on the plan that would prevent any sediment from washing towards the Middle River.
Okay, thank you.
And none of the structures you're installing are any larger or occupy any more space than what's currently there?
It's all below ground.
All below ground.
All below ground, yes. Yeah, no permanent or temporary structures above ground.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? If you are online, you can raise your hand in the Zoom app or *6 to unmute if you're on the phone. All right. Motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close.
Looking for a negative determination.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Motion to issue a negative determination.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. You're all set. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Item 3 was postponed. Item number 4, 277 Providence Street.
Hi all, Tom Schutz from Goddard Consulting here on behalf of the applicant at 277 Providence Street. So at the last hearing, we introduced the project to the commission, and we've now made some changes and improvements to the site and added some replication to our site because previously we had submitted the application without any replication, even though we were filling some bordering vegetated wetland. It took a little bit of work, but we've come now with 1.5 to 1 square feet of replication for the wetland that we will be potentially filling. So right in the middle of the site is the bordering vegetated wetland. It's 1,545 square feet. In order to mitigate for that and get to the 1.5 to 1 mitigation or replication that's required under the Worcester Wetland Bylaw, we have 2 replication areas. One in the northern portion of the site, which is approximately 1,603 square feet, and then a second in the western portion of the site, which is essentially 960 square feet. And that total is greater than the 1.5 to 1 required under the bylaw. This is just a small replication planting plan. We'll be submitting a full comprehensive replication plan and procedure later on. This is just to show where the plants are going to be going, the species that we're looking to put in, and also the type of seed mix as well. The 1,600 square foot wetland in the northern portion of the site is going to be collecting stormwater running off of the hillside, and then it's going to be connected via pipe that runs along the northern portion of the site to the other wetland, making them hydrologically connected, and then that wetland will be fed into a culvert, which will eventually reach the Blackstone River as the original wetland did. So we're essentially creating the same functions and values of the existing wetland with these 2 replication areas. I think that's it for the replication plan at this point. I'll turn it over to Matt for any just minor plan changes that he might have.
Matthew Ashley with Bowler. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, essentially, Tom and his team also went out there and did test pits all up in that area to check for groundwater, and they feel comfortable how it's going to be fed. And then the hydrologic connection down to the other one, ultimately all goes down to the Blackstone River. Previously, we had a yard drain up there in that first replication area that kind of went around the hotel down to an existing drainage manhole, kind of the middle of the plan on Plan South there. But with this new connection, everything wraps around and ultimately still goes to that drainage manhole, ultimately where that former or the existing wetland is kind of in the middle of the site there. So from a plan change, no layout has really been fully updated, utilizing some additional retaining walls up in that area, and just updated the pipe network to kind of go counterclockwise now around the site, but all ends up to the same place.
Staff comments?
Yep, so we've met with the project team several times to discuss the wetland replication at this point. Our initial concern was just making sure that that 1.5 to 1 ratio was met to comply with the ordinance, which it does on this proposed plan. We saw the planting plan that's on the screen that was sent over today and don't have any initial concerns with that. One of the concerns that we did raise during our last call was just regarding the separation from that kind of plan western wetland replication area to the subsurface infiltration unit, which per stormwater handbook is supposed to be set back 50 feet. So we understand we're waiting on revised plans to try and provide a little more separation there. But yeah, aside from that, I think we'll just wait until we get the full revised plan set and then issue a comment letter as we typically do at that point. But what's presented does appear to comply with the ordinance requirements for replication. That's it for now.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I'm all set. So there is no vote here today. This is just a first blush look.
I think we'd be looking to continue this to the
Yeah, we'd
meeting
be
on-
looking to continue this. We just want some comments and questions, if there are any, from the commission members, so we can update our plans and be back in front of you at the next hearing.
I have nothing at this time. So, do you need a motion for a continuance?
I have a couple questions.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I was just waiting on Lindsay, if she had any.
Nothing from me right now.
Great, thank you. What is the current distance now between the replication area and the underground infiltration system?
Probably like 15 or 20 feet.
15 or 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll be looking to relocate some of those chambers to create some additional separation from there.
Okay. And was there a reason that you didn't design the entire infiltration structure on the east side of the property?
Yeah, so we did some extensive geo and test pits across the whole site. And on the planned right side, we encountered some high groundwater, and really due to existing ledge out there that's pretty shallow. If you look at some existing aerial conditions, you can see it even from Google Earth, just kind of popping out over there. So that was really the only spot that the stormwater system fit.
So if it's high groundwater and it's just kind of popping out over there, is that what you just said?
Excuse me?
You just said it was high groundwater and what was popping out?
Ledge.
Ledge
Yep.
popping out, okay.
And that makes sense for the groundwater there.
All right. So do you anticipate any problems with the groundwater once you're in construction of that end of the property?
We did come up with a plan for, with planning on how to deal with groundwater out there during construction excavation. But in the ultimate plan, it's been designed to collect water coming off that hill and be collected and routed around the site or through the site.
Okay. So sorry, a question just back to you on the phasing of this project. Is that primarily planning that will oversee that?
No, we'll also have review over phasing, because we'll want to make sure erosion and sedimentation control is properly managed during construction, because all those catch basins that are right adjacent to that site just shoot right down to the Blackstone River. So phasing and sedimentation control is something we'll look at.
Okay, so some type of settlement ponds or something in the process to,
Yeah, I can't remember, it's been a while since we looked at the sequencing plan, but when we had looked at this proposal previously, we had some initial discussions about a phasing plan, and that did involve temporary sediment basins. It involved ways of routing water away from the construction site during construction, and also how slopes are going to be created and stabilized in order to prevent erosion from those, because it is steep slopes towards the front of the site where there is risk of sedimentation impacts to catch basins. So yeah, that'll be something that we look at closely when we do our review of the full plan set and issue comments.
okay, all right. Is there anyone here from the public? Questions or comments about the project? Raise your hand on Zoom if you're online. Raise your hand on the phone by pressing *9. What's that? Okay, thank you. All right, so we're just, do we need to vote for a continuance or postponement?
Yeah, so you guys are okay with the next hearing on July 21st? So it would be a motion to continue the hearing to July 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Tony, aye. Okay, see you next month.
Thank you.
Next item, number 5, 522 Grove Street, notice of intent.
I think we have the applicant online. I just gave you permission to unmute yourself, Sebastian, if you want to give a quick overview.
Absolutely. Sebastian, the owner of 522 Grove Street. We've been working with the city to take care of the dock at the end of the property. And also we had a boat dock that you see on the left there with the pontoon on the end of it that we're talking about getting through the permitting process with the city. We've been working with Maddie Vanderboom. She did a site visit and talked us through doing the paperwork properly. And here we are now.
Staff comments?
Yep, so as the commissioners may remember, this was an enforcement order, or it still is currently an enforcement order that was issued back in 2020, essentially for the structures, so the deck at the end of the peninsula there and the new dock. So the commission voted to require that they file a notice of intent to properly permit these structures. They did waive the need for engineered plans for the dock and the deck. So staff did kind of help them work through it. So DEP finally issued a file number. They did have concerns about BVW being present on the site, but staff did conduct a site visit and confirm that there wasn't BVW on the site. It's manicured lawn in this area. The area is within borderlands subject to flooding. It is filed as a limited project, and any offset caused by the deck is pretty minimal. They do have the measurements for the deck and dock in the application, and yeah.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
How are the docks anchored? Are they permanent or floating, or how is that?
So the docks are actually, the dock on the left there, it's aluminum. It's just sitting on footing, so there's actually no anchoring at all. They're just sitting on like a 6x6 pad on each side that just sits on top of the dirt, so it could be moved, removed in any way that were to your liking.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Lindsay?
Nope.
Okay. So if you could just explain DEP's comments that came in, they were concerned about.
Yeah, so they were concerned that so originally the application came in listing bordering vegetated wetland as an impacted resource area, but that was not the case. I think they were following the enforcement order, which had listed that as an impacted area, but didn't turn out to be the case. So basically the only resource area is borderland subject to flooding that's being impacted. So they did revise their application and send in a new application stating that it's just borderland subject to flooding as the impacted resource area, and not BVW.
Got it. Okay, so then, since this is retroactive, I mean, it's work that's already done, we would still condition it as if it was
Yep.
presented?
Yep, so the conditions will be a little bit different than a site that has active erosion control, so we will remove some of the standard conditions to kind of fit a site that's already existing.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? Anyone on Zoom or online? No? Do I close the hearing? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
Motion
So
to close.
moved. Sorry. So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Is there a proposed order of conditions?
All right, so staff recommends the standard conditions with the exceptions of, let's see. Oh, sorry. So we do have a finding, so a discretionary allowance issued under section 4.24 of the the Worcester Wetland Protection Act for structure, the dock and deck within 30 feet of the buffer zone. And then we recommend standard conditions with the exception of 21 persons responsible for compliance with the order of conditions, 22 for notification, 28 for erosion and sediment control installation, 29 for pre-construction conference. Yep, and then in addition to the remaining standard conditions, we do recommend these conditions to be met at the completion of the project. So prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance, the applicant shall demonstrate having obtained a Chapter 91 license. And then we have ongoing conditions for docks. So any seasonal component of the dock shall be stored in an upland location and secured to prevent damage in the event of floods. And no fuel shall be stored within 100 feet of the lake. And then we also have ongoing condition for wetland permitting.
Does the applicant have any questions about the order of conditions?
No, I don't. I just have one thing I wanted to ask about. We had mentioned that on the right side of the property, we've always had a dock over there. You can see, like, yep, okay, so that picture there, there's that wooden dock there. So we had mentioned to Maddie if it would be easier or more convenient or whatever it is to move the aluminum dock to where that is and dispose of that wood dock. It's been there for probably 60 years. And that was originally where we wanted to put our dock, but we didn't want to pull anything out of the water without permission. And again, the aluminum dock can be moved in 5 minutes. It's not stuck into the dirt or anything.
I think it's beneficial to remove a structure that's not being used, especially in borderland subject to flooding.
So the plan would just be to remove and dispose of it?
Remove and dispose of it and put that aluminum dock where it was, as that was the original permitted area for the property.
The only question I have on that is that wooden dock anchored? Would you have to do any kind of demolition to remove it, or is it just yank it out of the water type thing?
No, it's so old that it's literally 2 2x6s, and all the boards have already come off, so it's literally 2 loose 2x6s.
Okay.
It would be a 2-minute job, and it wouldn't disturb the ground at all.
Okay. I don't have any objections to that.
Okay. I don't either.
So are we looking for a motion for how are we proceeding on this?
I would suggest just adding a condition that the deteriorating wooden dock be removed as part of this project.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Okay, you're all set.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Item number 6, new business notice of intent, 10 Renfrew Street, 4 Inverness Avenue, and 0 Inverness Avenue.
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm James Tatro from Expedited Engineering here representing GM Properties LLC, the applicant. And I've never really gotten to use the pointer. Sort of works. Let me see if I get better effect over here. Nope. No one doesn't like me. All right, well.
Feel free to grab the mic and point,
can, yeah,
point
grab the
up at
mic
the
and
screen
go
if
up.
you want.
Just bring the microphone with you,
Okay.
and you can just point at it.
Yeah, sure. So right now at 10 Inverness Ave, you can see it is just grade in the background here. There's an existing house with driveway. There's an existing garage right here off the end of Renfrew Street. On the other side of the property to the west is Inverness Ave, which comes to an end right here. This is the drivable limits at those catch basins. Yep, yeah, you can see it on the aerial view. You're not driving through here, at least not easily. And so that's what's in place now. You can see that there must have been more yard at one point, but it's rather overgrown now. The applicant at different points had looked at different options for what he might try to do on site. That's why we actually had gone out here 2 different times doing deep holes. The site is actually all in what was mapped as Chatfield Hollow Series soil, which is one of the kinds, when you see it on the map, that you think, okay, are we going to have ledge here? And we actually did, I think, on something like 4 out of 5 deep holes, we didn't have a big machine, so maybe it's a little part of it, but got refusal in the hole, meaning we only could dig so far down before hitting rock that couldn't move. But the soil itself was actually pretty good. We characterized it all as sandy loam, but it was almost the next category up, loamy sand. So we're actually being a little bit conservative in all our estimates of how much effect we're going to get from infiltration of groundwater. So what's proposed, I guess I'll ask you to jump back to the other sheet again, is 2 duplexes on Inverness Ave, another duplex on Renfrew Street, and a 2-family condominium at the very end. These would all have pretty moderate slopes. Nothing is going to exceed 2-to-1 slope here. We're not even proposing any retaining walls. We have no wetlands on or near this site. I do want to say, yeah, this is the benefit of coming to the meeting. You see a question, go to another person, you say, oh, did we handle that? And you ask someone about catch basin protection, and I went back and looked at our plans, and I thought we had put in a note there saying that there would be silt sacks in these 2 catch basins and these 2 before work starts, but there is not a line to that effect. So we would certainly expect if there's an order of conditions issued, that would be added to it. So again, we're here because both of these buildings are within 100 feet of this catch basin. This one obviously is within 100 feet of this one. 100 feet just gets you onto this lot, doesn't quite hit that proposed building, but this is why we're here, is the proximity of work to catch basins, again, both in existing ones, both in Inverness Ave and in Renfrew Street. And it's actually kind of an interesting spot. This is sort of an abandoned house. If you go out there, I don't know how long it's been since anyone was living there, but you have a kind of interesting effect. You kind of you drop down away from Grafton Street, and you don't really much experience the noise or whatever of Grafton Street in this particular spot. It's kind of a nice little spot. And again, we're going to grade this, there's sort of 2 levels here. You sort of have the 514 and 516 Ds, and you are in the 520s and to 530 at the front of these lots. These buildings would both be walkout back, where this one would not be. This one would also be, and just to make the grades work with the least amount of work. And what you see here, these symbols with some hatching in each case. This is an infiltration structure with 4 Cultec chambers for each unit, and a single one receiving the condos. So what we have for you, I think, is a pretty straightforward, pretty unobjectionable project. Again, I left one note out, which I realized after listening to a couple hearings back, the comments and the questions. So I would, if it was the commission's sentiment to issue an order, I would ask certainly that be, because I was surprised it wasn't there, but that silt sacks should be in place before any earthwork begins on any lots. But I'll try and answer any questions.
Thank you. Staff comments?
Yeah, so staff comments on the project were pretty minimal, minor plan changes. We did have one comment regarding meeting Stormwater Standard 2 regarding peak rates of runoff under pre and post conditions. The calculations do show that peak rates increase very marginally under basically all of the analyzed storm events towards the street in each direction as a result of the driveway pitching. Ideally, we would like to not have increases in peak flows to either direction, but would concede that CFS was pretty minimal. I think it was like 0.1 CFS during the 2-year storm. But again, I'm not sure if, I guess, question back to the applicant, is there something else you can do with the driveway pitch to route that water over pervious surfaces or into some sort of rain garden or something that would alleviate that or attenuate that runoff?
I don't know, it's just really tough to the chair, what Mr. Flint is talking about is because if you look at these contours here, you see that you have sort of a little ridge right at the front of these properties. And so so right now, no runoff from for instance, the Lot 1L area can get into the street. It's physically impossible because you're rising up, hitting that ridge that's in the right-of-way, and then you would drop down to the pavement. But in the future, we're proposing a driveway to have a moderate pitch to the street, and thereby some runoff from the driveway is getting into the street where effectively there was none before. As he says, it's a very small amount, and we do want to have a driveway pitched positively away from the building. Some of it we could do maybe a little better with the pitching because this driveway, for instance, is going from a garage elevation of 531, where you're probably almost 532 here, but you're 530 here. We probably could do just a little better to have the runoff, instead of going out, go a little bit down, which will then sort of put it to the next one and then each one in succession. But we probably could do just a little better than that if the very small increase is just not something that would be accepted.
Before I start, the other commissioners have questions or concerns?
Not at this time.
Just so I understand, looking at the plan again, so you're saying that there will not be a driveway initially on unit number 1?
No, I'm saying that there's nothing there now. And again, if you were walking there now, you would walk up from elevation 522, 24, 26, 28, 30, right at the 32, and right just inside the right-of-way is where you actually hit sort of a ridge or a sort of a local high point, and then it drops down probably a foot to the actual pavement.
To the street.
And so nothing can get out to the street now, but just the little bit of area that the driveway, having positive pitch out to the road, might, a little bit of runoff that it might carry out there is an increase obviously over zero.
So just explain the depiction for me then. The other driveways are depicted with wire.
Oh, some of these have, are indicating the site entrance mat or site exit mat. That's why the hatching is on.
For construction.
Yes.
Got it.
Actually, if Eric had, or I don't know who's doing the controlling. Eric had dropped it back to the grading plan, which doesn't have the
Got it. Okay.
barriers or the site entrance mat. So so you see them all the same.
All right, so to staff's point regarding even though it's a small exceedance, this happens to be an area of the city that drains to Broadmeadow Brook, which we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, and it's a very flashy, overwhelmed wetland. And so any tiny incremental change is too much. If there's a way to reduce it, would be the goal for probably any property that ultimately drains down to that area of the city.
Sure. I would just add, I think we are reducing our flow to our southerly abutters, who are by far the greater recipient of runoff from the site. But as you say, we're going from probably literally zero to in some of these areas to a very small amount. But we could modify the plan to have the runoff go off the south side of it here, instead of the positive pitch just carrying it into the road.
Did you ever consider a different type of driveway surface, other than asphalt, something semi-permeable?
For this very small area, I don't think a permeable pavement is, they don't even do a load that small. I guess the only other option would be I always think PICP, the paving block, as an option. That is a legitimate option. It is a little more cost, obviously. But that is a legitimate option for, I think it's really a question of I think the units on this side, was it also what, Renfrew, I forget?
I believe they increased to both streets. I know it
Oh, to both?
decreased,
Okay.
I know it decreased to the two design points that were abutters, but I believe it increased to
Okay.
both streets.
Okay. I mean, my first inclination would be to just vary this grading a little. For instance, this 530 contour that's shown right here and kind of stopping before this driveway, if this 530 just went up a little bit into the halfway into the driveway, it would effectively be saying that all the water should not be going to the street, but would hit his. And we could similarly, as we were sort of saying, similarly direct, it'd be sort of a cascade, but it'd be a really minor flow, so it wouldn't be a big deal to carry it successively to each driveway and then down. And then it's just going to, it's just be a matter of the flow to the southerly abutters who were already slightly decreasing the flow to.
And so the infiltration structures are just for roof drains?
Just for roof, yes. Yeah, there's no, that's why there's no, nothing to modify, no CDS stormwater unit, et cetera, about what's to get to them. There's no, effectively no drainage system here proposed except those infiltration structures receiving the roof runoff.
Questions or comments from the public?
Yeah, Thomas Steingrass.
So if you could please come up, just, you can come up to the podium if you like, or have a seat and just state your name and speak to me.
Thomas Steinkraus on the property right below this, and all that water that's coming off of it, there's only one drain at the bottom of the street of, was it Renfield? Right there, that's the only drain, and it's drastic like this, and the property that comes off where the two buildings are gonna be built, the slope is like this. So everything is gonna come down and drain onto my property as is, it's already to flood. So I'd like to know what they're gonna do to keep all that, which is not level in any way, to keep it from flooding my property that's below.
So, I'm sorry, if you could just tell me again, where are you relative to the site right
I
down there?
am
Okay, yeah, he's pointed out.
Steinkraus, 24 Arborwood Drive.
Got it. And right now, the property is just, the water's just flowing off the site onto your,
Site behind me too, but all this from units, mind if I use this?
Okay.
Units 1 and 2, 3 and 4 are a drastic hill. They're coming, and the only catch basin is the bottom of the street here. So all that water is gonna end up on my property because I'm at the bottom of the hill. I'd like to know what they're gonna do about it to keep me from getting flooded
Flooded
because
out.
in Worcester, we get flooded.
right, so right now, with nothing going on at the site,
There's
you're
right
getting
now, all
water.
they did was clear cut the property, and now it's all overgrown, so they have to come in and cut it all back again. The only thing that's still standing is that one house. So,
Okay, but I'm just trying to understand, but right now, you are getting water even though there's nothing going on with the
right now, I
property?
have the rock wall that's holding it back, which is on the shared property line,
Okay,
but that is a huge hill that, when they clear cut it, all the water was coming down off of it.
Okay.
Because there's only one drain at the bottom of the hill, which is not catching anything.
right, it's not designed to run
And,
to the
right,
street.
It's only designed for the houses that are on the street now, but units 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 will be basically right in my side yard with all the runoff. And I'd like to know what they're gonna do about it, put in extra drains and angle it differently or what? So I don't get flooded.
Right,
And
okay, good question.
through the chair, Mr. Steinkraus's property was one of the properties to which we studied the flow. And I would just note, actually, when we were out there, one of the times we were out there looking at things, we actually, I forget which of these two catch basins was completely covered. It was, I forget how far down it was, a foot or more under stuff. We actually opened up one of those two catch basins. Again, I forget which one it was. But we did, the bottom line though, we did study the flow to Mr. Steinkraus's property. That was one of the properties we looked at in the drainage report.
Is this a public street? It says
It's
public
labeled as
way.
public on the plans, I don't know, I couldn't
public street.
confirm.
It is
It
public.
is. It's odd that it stops, but it is a public street.
It stops, and it's a dead easement. So the only thing that can get in there is to redo the pipes and everything, because the rest of it's all my property. They put in a post and everything to stop anything from coming through. 'Cause at one point, I guess it was gonna be a road, but it never was.
Okay.
There's also a chain link
Utility
fence
easement,
there,
okay.
if I remember
Yes,
right.
it's
Yeah.
all chained off, so no one can come through.
So it's not your property, but
Mine.
I'm sorry.
The property is all mine where it says easement.
Oh, that's yours as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the city just has a utility easement through it or some type of a?
Yes, but they made that a dead easement by putting up a huge yellow pole at the bottom of the street saying nothing can come through anymore.
And through the chair, we're not trying to do anything in any way to change the right-of-way of
No,
Inverness
no,
Ave.
I was just trying to understand who owned it or who might be responsible for, so it is your property, the easement's on your property.
Yes.
And at this point, it hasn't been removed from the city plan, but they are not using it or accessing it.
They can access it if they have to put a pipe up, but other than that, it's my driveway, and that's it.
Got it.
But like I said, I just want to know what is going to happen with all the water runoff and everything, considering I'm at the bottom, basically, of the hill.
And through the chair.
Oh, sorry, sorry for. No. Apologize.
And through
Yep.
the chair, again, that was the two primary properties we studied really were Mr. Steinkraus and the neighbor next door, Bustillo, to see, because they're the primary recipients now
Of
of what's
any of the
happening. Because
flow.
this is, if you look at these contours, you see that's sort of forming a half bowl, and that runoff mostly goes probably to his neighbor, Bustillo, but also, a little bit to him.
Okay, and then everything heading to the street and overflowing is hitting you?
Yes.
Okay. So the stormwater calculations indicated that there'd be a slight reduction to the abutters. I mean,
Yeah, so the way it was modeled to the abutting property of the gentleman speaking, they modeled it as during the 2-year storm, pre-existing conditions have 0 CFS of flow, 10-year storm, 0.01 CFS, 25-year storm, 0.02, and 100-year storm, 0.05. And then those were reduced to 0, or maintained at 0, 0.01, and then reduced to 0.01 and 0.03 under those four
In fact, I
CFS.
just realized this looking again at the plan, but we actually very specifically create a swale here to not have the runoff from the side of this unit go to Mr. Steinkraus, because he gets very little now. And so this swale, if you look at this 514 contour going from the back of this unit, comes around, goes towards Inverness Ave, comes back, and that's all to indicate that you're creating a swale to catch runoff. Again, the raindrop that, say, fell here in the future would go down and then over and probably eventually get into Bustillo's property where most of the runoff goes now.
right?
So we actually did specifically grade it to keep future runoff away from you.
But it also sounds like runoff
From the street.
going into Inverness Ave is also making it way
Right.
down to your property. And that's where we are seeing the biggest increase in peak flows, is biggest being a moderate term here, because we're still talking about less than 1 CFS, but we're going from 0, 0.01, 0.02, and 0.05 to 0.09, 0.18, 0.26, and 0.43 to Inverness Ave. So I think I guess that's why we would want to see peak rates reduced to all design points, so that there wouldn't be any potential
Right.
negative
Yep. So both,
Implications
yeah,
of-
for the city drainage and for the property owners abutting it. You said one of the drains was completely buried.
Yeah, one of the existing catch basins at the end of
Does anyone know the
Inverness.
condition of the structures themselves? Is it completely buried? I assume nobody's been cleaning it out.
They actually seemed fine.
Okay.
Except for kind of bizarrely having, being totally covered over. Once you got to the grate, it actually looked okay.
And,
You know, but that's just an inspection from
I
standing
mean,
there and
have you
looking
noticed
at
the flow in those drains and when it rains? Do they,
Catching it, and the
They
city does come
catch-
by once every blue moon with the picker
to clean it out?
to clean out both sides.
Okay, all right, so it's had some maintenance over time. So yeah, I think, you know, I mean, my personal preference would be to have you find a way to manage the water there on the site, within the site, to prevent it from going into the city storm drains or from on the abutter's property, whether it means getting creative with some, I realize it's tight, but some other type of swale or a rain garden, or maybe considering the infiltration systems could in fact accommodate more than just roof runoff. You said something about the test pits. You had previous test pits from a prior project.
I was just going to say, we went out there 2 different times digging, and we really had the same results each time, where you got to, maybe it was around 6 feet, and you were, especially with the little machine we had, your refusal as you couldn't dig any further. Soils were actually pretty good. We call them sandy loam, but they were almost the next category up, loamy sand.
Yeah.
So it was at least reasonable for infiltration for the soils that were there. Just had to be cognizant of, of the depth.
I have a completely off the wall kind of question, but is there any impact in the calculations for trees and shrubs that improve the numbers?
Yeah, so basically, different areas are assigned a curve number, which
yeah.
represents the perviousness of the site, and I don't think you would, I think no matter what here, you'd probably end up with grass as a cover type, because even if you put a couple trees in, you wouldn't call that forested, because that's really supposed to be like a more dense actual forest cover. But plants certainly do also soak up water and attenuate runoff. But as far as stormwater calculations go, if you're getting at kind of like using plantings to change those numbers, that's not something that I would expect to happen.
Okay.
We're going from a probably better cover, this is probably woods/brush, I forget exactly how we characterized it, a better cover to a worse being lawn. The best thing we have going is that you take, for instance, this area, and if you can send that roof runoff into dry well, now this area is gone, that footprint of that building, and thereby, if this is 8,000 square feet and you take out 2,000 square feet of it, well, okay, now you're dealing with 6,000 square feet of maybe a little worse type of cover lawn versus the wood/brush, but maybe that comparison comes out okay.
And now that you mentioned that, actually, I do recall also when first looking at this, seeing it and thinking that some of the area that was classified as woods and the pre-existing conditions might have potentially been more appropriately classified as grass, which ultimately would tilt the peak rate calculations in the favor of the project, I guess. But yeah, I guess not sure where I was going with that. But
There is some grass in the backyard here. It's just, there's brush, especially behind Mr. Steinkraus. And it's probably encroached a bit over time with the sort of abandonment of that house. But if you go behind this, it's hard to see the gray symbol of the house here. You can go to, 30 feet back or so, and you're in lawn before you get into the thick brush.
I have a question for the applicant. Is 100% of the roof runoff being directed to those units?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some of that flow obviously then doesn't end up on the abutter's property or in the street.
it wouldn't, but that would be factored into the calculations that we're
Right,
looking at.
already.
Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking, so there's the calculation problem, but then there's the real problem of what's been happening on the property for which a calculation is meaningless because it's hitting your yard. But it sounds like the runoff to the abutters would be less post-construction to the abutters,
Based on the current numbers,
to the abutters.
yes, in terms
yes.
of direct runoff to the abutter, but if the runoff that's impacting Inverness Ave is impacting the abutter, then it would be an
Right,
increase.
no, I'm just, based on that calculation, post-construction would be less.
Correct.
If we can fix
Equal-
the
equal or
problem
less.
with the street and what's running there, which is partially at least running to the abutter also, would help. And then I think the other question you're really asking, Stu, is all during this construction process, what's going to happen to your property while this is all underway? And making sure that things aren't running off, now, especially at this point, silt, dirt, really undesirable material into your yard.
I think if we go to the next sheet, we do show, a erosion control barrier, sediment control barrier, I should say, all along the south boundary of the property for during construction.
And that typical silt fence and
That would be a silt fence and straw wattle combo.
and what's the elevation change from the project site to the abutter?
I actually couldn't tell you that off the top of my head, and quite honestly, and no offense, I wasn't paying attention to your site when I was out here. I was busy looking at what's going on in Inverness and here, so maybe the neighbor can attest. How much drop is there from, the property line to, the middle of your lot or where your house is?
It's 45 or less, 30 degree, but because like I said, I'm at the bottom of the street.
I think staff is trying to figure that out from
Yep.
the,
Yep.
Looks like the elevation at the abutter's house is around 510.
okay. Well, this is 514, this last contour on this property. So he must be about 4 feet or so below the elevations here.
I guess my question would be, is there some combination of either a more pervious driveway or grading that could be used to reduce the peak rates to the street?
Yes, absolutely. And we've identified 2 different ways. Either sort of the grading, in effect, very gently swaling that driveway, or if that is just not going to work out, I would lean towards the paving blocks. That's, I think, a reasonable choice in here. And it's, it's something you can do on small scale, whereas you really can't do the pervious pavement small scale. They want to make up a load of that of so many square yards and cubic
I
yards.
frankly wouldn't recommend it anyway, because you're relying then on future homeowners to know how to care for it, and
Right.
no, and we can't manage to do it ourselves at the municipal level, so asking homeowners to, not practical. So would it be appropriate to postpone here pending?
Yeah, we could go either way. If the commission wants to see the revised plans before closing, we can do that. I think, given how little runoff there is increasing, staff would also be comfortable with the condition that revised plans be provided along with a revised stormwater report demonstrating compliance with Standard 2, reducing peak rates to all design points. But if the commission wants the opportunity to review the plans before approving or denying the project, then a continuation would be most appropriate.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions for us or for the applicant?
Not about the water runoff, it's about how they're gonna
Phase construction?
construction through the rocks. But
I'm
how they're
sorry.
doing the construction, ripping through the rocks that are there,
Oh, okay,
but that has nothing to do with water runoff.
I understand. Yep. Is there, I realize you're not here to answer this question, but they plan on
Sure.
blasting ledge?
We hope not to do very much of that, but you can't, based on a few deep holes around the site and getting roughly 6 feet down, that obviously doesn't preclude you from getting, ledge 2 feet down at any particular spot. So I guess the real answer, if you look at the proposed elevations, this is basement floor 513, this is 14, 16. So, you would at first glance say, gee, you encountered it about 6 feet on your deep holes, you're only cutting about 3 feet, you should be good. You say over here 514 versus 5, you might have a issue at the corner of this one, you're not sure. This one, basement 523 versus 2020, you would expect not to have an issue there. This one, basement 514 versus, it's about 4 feet down here. Again, our experience was hitting about 6 feet, but ledge is, randomly variable, and you don't know that you're not going to get a spike of it 2 feet from the surface just where, you think you're going to have a foundation. So we don't expect to do significant blasting, if any, but we can't rule it out, obviously.
Okay. Is that planning who normally regulates that?
I would imagine that would be planning through some sort of construction management plan. I'm not 100% positive on that. Yeah, I mean, definitely outside of conservation purview, but that does actually make me think of another question, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but what was the separation like between the infiltration units and the bedrock on the site?
It varies, because we're, again, the bedrock was effectively the elevation for seasonal high groundwater on a couple of the holes, because we had really no particular modeling indicating your typical indicator of seasonal high groundwater, and we were stopped by ledge or hitting a rock that the small machine couldn't move. So we're basing it on those elevations, having separation from that. So I think we've got more than 2 feet on all of these, but again, it's, we would still, similarly, we'd be, if you hit a spike of ledge right, here, it's possible, and we'd have to figure out what to do in that case. But all of these elevations of the units were based on seasonal high groundwater, which is really off of that same ledge elevation.
Okay. But yeah, getting back to the blasting, I think if that were regulated by any board, I would assume that would be the planning board. And this is in front of the planning board currently, correct?
Coming up, yes.
Coming up, okay.
Yep, okay. All right, so you'd have the opportunity to ask some other questions there as well. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome.
And I guess I would just say in that regard, the fact that we are going to have to go to the planning board and maybe making revisions for them, the applicant, I guess, for our side, we would argue that we would hope that would make the commission feel okay about conditioning approval based on addressing those issues, because we're still in front of, to be in front of the planning board. And it's not as though everything is done and, nothing will catch this issue.
So ordinarily, wouldn't we wait for them first?
It varies from project to project. Who closes first? When are you expected to go in front of the planning board? Are you at the meeting?
I forget the date in July that we're there.
I guess the flip side of the argument would be that it's not going to hold you up much to continue one more hearing with us to get in front of the planning board. I know it would save you a trip back here, but just in terms of if the commission wanted to see another set of revised plans. But again, I guess staff doesn't really have a preference either way. Would be amenable to a conditioned approval for revised stormwater report and revised plans, but also would totally understand the commission's rationale for wanting to see the plans first before approving. So either way.
Okay. Commissioner Kirschner, Commissioner Nystrom, do you have any strong feelings one way or the other about moving forward on this or waiting?
I've been rolling it over in my head, and the planning board is probably going to make him look at his plans again. So how is that going to impact what we're doing here? I guess would be my question. So in my mind, I'm saying, why don't we just wait until we get one set of plans we could feel comfortable with and vote then.
Commissioner Nystrom?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Is the applicant amenable to that?
So that would be, do we have to close public
So then-
hearing first?
Well, so then I guess, Chair, I would ask to continue the hearing to your next meeting, and we'll try and, we understand what it is that the commission and staff feels we need to address, and we'll
Further,
get
okay.
on that.
So it would be a motion to continue the hearing to July 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye. Okay, so we'll see you in July.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No additional hearings, right? Seven postponed, 8 postponed. Number 9, request for certificates of compliance.
So first up, we have 262 Mill Street. So you guys may remember this project. So this was, or this enforcement order. So we issued an enforcement order for a veterinary clinic who was supposed to do wetland replication. They had come for a COC, and we noticed that they never did the wetland replication, or at least it didn't take. So the project originally came through in 2001. So right now, they're looking for a partial certificate of compliance. Essentially, it's a tiny little lot, the proposed Lot A on the plan here. They're trying to help out their neighbors and sell that lot to their neighbors. This is not in the location of the wetland replication area, and the veterinary office and the wetland replication would still be under the order of conditions. So they were hoping to get a partial certificate of compliance. So at this point, they have done the replication area. It's just in the monitoring stage, so they have to monitor it for 2 growing seasons. But staff doesn't have any concern with the partial certificate of compliance for this Lot A that was divided off as an A&R, I think, last winter.
Commissioners, any comments or concerns about granting a partial?
I'm okay with that.
Motion to issue the partial certificate of compliance.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye.
All right, so 3 Knollwood Drive, this is also an enforcement order that we had. This was one that went through in 2020. And essentially, they filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. They had an order of conditions. The order conditions did expire last year, but then they were renewed later on. So we had reissued an enforcement order to allow them to do the work under the notice of intent, but it ended up they get renewed anyways. So they have completed the work. Originally, they had, filled in borderland subject to flooding. They had removed some vegetation within the buffer zone. At this point, they have restored all the grades to what was previously existing. And they have done all the required plantings. Staff did go out and visit, and the plantings, although small, are healthy and growing. So at this point, I think staff would be comfortable with issuing a certificate of compliance to close out the order of conditions. It's also worth, the enforcement order was just to allow them to do the work. There was no monitoring conditioned into the original order conditions issued, so staff would be comfortable with the enforcement order also being lifted off this property as well.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions or concerns about that request?
Not at this time. So we have to move to close out the orders of condition?
Yep, so move to issue a complete certificate of compliance for 3 Knollwood Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni? Aye.
And then I guess an additional motion to close out the enforcement order.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirchner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye.
All right, and our final certificate of compliance is for 136 Burncoat Terrace. So you guys may remember at the last meeting, they had requested a certificate of compliance, but the grass hadn't grown in yet. So staff did revisit it essentially on this June 26th, and the grass is fully grown in at this point. There is a weird drain line that runs along the side of the property, but it turns out the neighbors uphill from them have their gutter draining through there. So the neighbors are working on figuring a better drainage solution than just dumping water onto their new neighbor's property. So they would be looking for a complete certificate of compliance to close out. This was a local-only filing, so no wetlands near the property.
Without objection, so moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye. How long do we give the other house to fix their water problem before they're in enforcement order?
I think they are working with that ISD, I believe, somebody mentioned, but, yeah. All right.
At least it wasn't the swimming pool.
Right. So one thing I did forget to mention in the 522 Grove Street enforcement order, so now that they have gone through the process, filed a notice of intent with us, and we have issued an order of conditions, the commission could opt to lift the enforcement order on their property at this point, so.
So I think would we just want to verify that they've filed for Chapter 91, or I believe that was one of the,
Yeah, so that would be in order to close out the order of conditions in the future. So when they want to come back to get their certificate of compliance,
okay,
that
not
could be
related to
handled
the
then.
enforcement order. Got
Yeah.
it.
Typically, with lifting enforcement orders in cases like this, we would lift the enforcement order contingent upon the order of conditions becoming valid. So that would be appeal period elapses and they record it at the registry of deeds, so that there's that leverage as well to complete. the
So,
work that they have to
okay.
do.
All right, so the request then is to lift the enforcement order on 520 Grove Street?
And pending the completion of the conditions,
Correct, or,
so moved.
yep.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatoni, aye.
Next up, I'm just going to give a quick update on 198 Granite Street. This is the Linders or Sam's pull-apart site over on Granite Street. We don't have the applicant here today, so we can keep the discussion pretty brief, but basically we did receive proposed stormwater improvements and a wetland restoration plan. The proposed stormwater improvements are primarily in the street. The applicant's proposing to install a water quality unit on site and add a couple catch basins, and is requesting that the city replaces the drain pipe in the street, rebuilds the head wall, and adds several catch basins in the street, as well as berming the side of the road to capture and redirect stormwater into catch basins for treatment before discharging to the adjacent wetlands. The applicant's also proposing a settling pool at that head wall on National Grid property, which you can kind of see in the top right corner of the screen. Staff's initial reaction to the plan is that we were hoping to see more stormwater management on site rather than using the street infrastructure as a last line of defense. We also have some concerns about the city being responsible for maintenance and also for the maintenance that would be necessary for the basin on National Grid's property. So we do plan to do a bit more of a detailed review and issue a response or a comment letter to the applicant. And we're also hoping to set up a site walk with the applicant and the commission to review the wetland area and talk about the restoration plan that they have proposed. So I think I'd leave it at that for now. Happy to answer your questions if the commission has any, but we're not looking for a motion at this point tonight. Just wanted to give you guys an update on this.
Okay.
I have no questions this time.
Anything else?
All right, and then just an update for 148A Torrey Fort Lane. So they were required to do plantings by today's date, and they did plant white pine and sweet pepper bush over the weekend. Also, naturally, a lot of the vegetation has grown back in. So this was that property that they were looking to build a single-family home. They got overzealous with the clearing of the lot, got into the 15-foot buffer and the BVW as well. But it is nice to see that everything is kind of coming back on its own, and they did the additional plantings that we required. So I just wanted to give you guys that update.
Okay, so they still have an open order of conditions for the actual construction project?
They do, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So staff doesn't have anything under discussion of active projects, unless the commission or chair have any projects they want to discuss. On the open space discussion, maybe I can turn it over to Lindsay, but we did receive word from the Community Preservation Committee that the Brooks Dairy Farm acquisition project was recommended for funding through the CPA. So at this point, the Planning Division intends to apply for that land grant, and hopefully we can get that and complete that acquisition. Lindsay, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from the CPC process.
Yeah, we put together our funding recommendation list, which was 19 projects and a little bit over $4 million. The list is going to be before City Council at one of their meetings in July. I'm not sure of the exact date, to get their approval before it becomes official. But yeah, we recommended the project for funding.
Is there any value in writing a letter of support or in some other way showing that it's an important project that would be helpful for?
I think at this point, I don't know that there's a dish that we can provide additional materials to the city council with the application. I think they can only consider what was already submitted with the application.
Okay.
We did have letters of support from Greater Worcester Land Trust and Mass Audubon for the project.
That were submitted as part of the overall package. Okay. And Lindsay, do they vote on this as a slate of projects, or do they get to pick and choose themselves at city council?
My understanding is that they could sort of pick and choose, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But it is my understanding that they could move it around if they so chose.
Good to know.
And then on communications, the only one that I would comment on is item 13A. We did receive notice of DEP's initiation of an appeal of the order of conditions issued by the commission for 4 Brant Lane. DEP issued that on the grounds that they believe the project and order of conditions may not adequately address the performance standards for bank, and that there may be negative consequences for down gradient wetlands as a consequence of the proposed work. So basically what happens now, DEP just scheduled a site visit. We will forward that invitation along to the commission for July 18th at 10 a.m. on site. DEP then has the option of either reverting jurisdiction to the commission, at which case the order is just they can record it, becomes valid. DEP can choose to issue a superseding order of conditions, or DEP can imply that there's some sort of change to the project that they'd be willing to accept and have the applicant file and request for an amended order of conditions. So we'll see how it plays out. We've only had one appeal in the past 4 or 5 years, and in that case, DEP reverted jurisdiction to the commission. So we'll see how it goes after the site walk on July 18th. But just wanted to give you all a heads up on that.
Okay. And they specified exactly what they're objecting to or concerned about?
They generally Yes, their concerns were not meeting performance standards for bank and for potential negative impacts to down gradient wetlands. That was pretty much the extent of detail that they went into for why they felt that. So they didn't give specific rationale for a certain component of the project that they felt didn't meet those performance standards. I mean, there was a significant amount of alteration to bank approved by this order of conditions because they essentially are filling it and rerouting it around the site.
Right.
So it's definitely a very, in terms of resource area quantification, a high level of disturbance. Personally, having been out to the site quite a few times and just seeing the bank that was being altered, I think it's going to be a drastically improved
Right.
resource area when it's complete,
So
so
we don't know if the DEP staff has even been to the site at
we
this
don't
point?
know if they've
Okay.
been out there or not.
Okay, yeah, I'm guessing when they get there, they'll understand better if they haven't seen it yet.
I remember one of the comments that DEP had, and they did have a significant amount of comments, which is understandable for a project of this size, but one of the comments they had was about trying to restore existing bank rather than create new bank. But again, that project, there was bank that was literally a parking lot, like it was just a depression in a paved surface. So I think that's kind of beyond what you can rehabilitate. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes at the site visit and take it from there. But at this point, there's nothing the commission really has to do. It's kind of just wait and see. It's all up to DEP. If they do choose to supersede it, they would only be superseding the decision under the Wetlands Protection Act. Our decision under the ordinance would still stand. So if whatever DEP's superseding order required plan revisions, the applicant would have to come back to separately amend their local approval if DEP were to issue a superseding order of conditions. But again, it hasn't happened in recent memory in Worcester, so we'll just have to see how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
And no comments on either of the other two communications unless the commission has any questions.
Nope. Do we need to approve the budget?
Yes. So next up, we have the fiscal year 26 Wetlands Protection Act budget. As some of you might recall, this is an annual process. The Wetlands Protection Act funds that are brought in through filing fees, state filing fees, are set aside into a dedicated fund that can exclusively be used for purposes of administering and enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act. That does involve trainings, paying for mileage to trainings, paying for specialized tools needed for this work. So, all the MACC courses and conferences that the commissioners go to, those are things that are funded by the Wetlands Protection Fund. Equipment that Maddie and I use on a regular basis, like augers and wetland flagging tape and things of that nature, are also things we would cover under the Wetlands Protection Act Fund. So this year we have a drafted budget. Basically, the way this works is council appropriates $20,000 as kind of a standard budget on a rolling basis for us. If we needed to go beyond that, we would need to make a request to appropriate additional funds. We haven't even come close to hitting that $20,000 mark over the past several years that we've been actively doing a budget. So currently we have $930 allocated to professional membership dues, $5,820 allocated towards trainings and conferences, $2,000 allocated towards miscellaneous equipment, and $11,250 allocated towards third-party review. And it's been a while since we've done a third-party review, but the existing ordinance caps what the applicant can be forced to pay for third-party review to $2,500, so anything above that would have to come out of the commission's budget. Just in terms of the overall fiscal picture, the current balance of the Wetlands Protection Fund is $110,627. That's up from last year by about $300, so we've taken in more than we've spent over the past year. There was, looks like we had $4,368 actually expended in fiscal year 25, so we were about just over $15,000 short of what we had budgeted for, and we took in 4,221. So I guess a slight decrease in overall balance from this time last year. So unless anybody has any questions, we are just looking for a vote to approve the fiscal year 25 Wetlands Protection Act budget.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye.
And for minutes, we have April 28th.
I move to accept the minutes of April 28th.
Second.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Aye.
Commissioner Nystrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Frattoni? Aye. Anything else? Any update from the Quinsigamon Commission?
No real updates. Yeah, we did have a meeting last week. General discussion was talking about adding no-bake zone buoys. There was talks of the Lake Ave North docks and how to renew those permits. So we are currently working with them to renew the permits for everyone that has come through with RDAs that we saw the past couple months. So we are working on their dock permits right now, so.
Good to know there's a follow-up on the process.
Yep.
Nothing else from
Nothing
staff?
else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Aye.